Hi everyone, this is Donna and welcome to the Whimsy Stamps channel. Today I'm creating a Grinchy type of Christmas card featuring the newly released Loads of Cheer and the Cosmic Swirl background. Now there is a product release video for both of these stamps and I will link those in the card up above with a little more information about each specific item. To get started on my card, I'm going to create the background first. I have a piece of Nina Solar White, 110-pound cardstock, and I have the background stamp aligned inside my Misty. I can go ahead and pick up the stamp with the door of my Misty and begin my stamping. I have treated the panel with some anti-static powder before stamping down the image. Now, I should point out that most new stamps need to be primed before the first use. Otherwise, you may get an imperfect impression the first time. I didn't prime my stamp, so I will need to stamp this image a couple of times to ensure that I get an even coverage. This is especially true for solid stamps, and even though this is a pattern stamp, the pattern portion of the stamp is solid. I used a teal pigment ink to stamp my image out, and then I will heat set the image with clear embossing powder. I used a rectangle die to die cut my panel down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and a second die to die cut the inner part of the panel at 3 1/2 by 4 3/4. I thought I would do an inlay for this card, but I do end up changing my mind in the end. So for now, I've stamped out the image of the Santa, and I'll use my Copic markers to color in the image. I'm beginning the coloring with his suit and his pants, whatever little bit of them are showing, and his hat with my red Copic markers. I started by laying down my lightest shade just to wet the paper, which is R22, and then I've mapped out my shadow areas with an R39, and I'll begin blending with R29, R24, and then back down to blend everything out with R22. So reds are one of those very tricky colors to blend, so I do go over this image twice to intensify the shadows and get a really smooth blend transition between each shade that I'm using. Next, I'm going to color in the skin using my go-to skin combination. I'm using triple E0, double E0, E4, E13, and E11 for the skin tone. Now, I have to apologize for my head keeps getting in the way. I think I've been had by those craft fairies that are notorious for playing tricks on us in our craft room, and they must have been messing with my camera, or I don't know, moving it or something. Now when I color, I do tend to have my head at like a side angle, but never before has my head been so much in the way of the camera shot. So I really do think I've been had by those craft fairies. Anyway, I've moved on to coloring the white part of this image using C3, C1, and C00. And I'm just adding some shading, doing some dots, doing some squiggly lines, I guess, with my C3. And then I'll blend that out with C1 and just go over everything once with the C00. For his beard, I'm using the same combination, and I'm just adding in flick marks with C3, C1, and C00. For the chimney bricks, I've laid down an E97 just to wet the paper of each brick, and that was my lightest shade. Then I'll come in and do some shading with E37, and I'll blend that out with an E99 and finish everything out again with E97. I'll finish coloring this image by adding some shading to the snowbank using the C3, C1, and C00 combination, and then just adding some shading to that newspaper that he's holding. And I'll use my Scan and Cut to cut this image out. I will have all of the color combinations that I use listed over on my blog, which I will link to down below in case you're interested. There are several punny sentiments in this stamp set, and I had a bit of a difficult time to decide which one I wanted to use for this Grinchy friend that I'm going to send this to. And then I just finally decided on sometimes coal just isn't enough. So I'll go ahead and stamp that down onto a piece of black cardstock that I've treated with anti-static powder. I'm using some clear embossing ink. And when I stamp that down, I will go ahead and add some white embossing powder and heat set that in place. So at this point, I have all of my elements ready, and I can start adhering the pieces down to a card base. I'm taking the frame of the outer part of that front panel, and I'm using some liquid adhesive to add that in place onto my card front. And then I will add some fun foam to the back of that inner piece of the background panel. I'm just measuring out the piece of fun foam that I need, and then I can use my scissors to trim off the fun foam to the size that I need. I just had a little tiny piece of the fun foam kind of sticking up over my panel, so I'm just going to use my scissors to trim this down. So at this point, I was kind of feeling like my background was missing something, and this card is kind of as clean and simple as I'm going to get. I'm not a card maker who tends to make a lot of clean and simple cards, but the way I decided I'm going to add a little bit of color onto my background is I cut a piece of red cardstock just slightly larger than the inner panel, and then I've added it behind the fun foam. And I really think adding that piece of red cardstock really brought that pop of color to this card. So I'll go ahead and finish that and adhere that to the center of my panel. And then I can start adding in my Santa image and adding in my sentiment banner. I've added foam adhesive to the back of the Santa, and I'll place him kind of in the center where it covers, or the center of that swirl. And then I will play around with the sentiment banner a little bit and finally decide to place it in the upper left-hand corner to complete this card. So that will do it for me for today. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you have, don't forget to leave a like and let me know in the comments if you have a Grinchy friend or a family member that this stamp set would be perfect for. We love seeing your creations using our stamps and would love for you to share them in our Facebook group or tag us on Instagram. I want to thank you for stopping by today and spending a little time with me, and I hope you have a fantastic week. Bye for now.